This is John 2. We're just going to read 1 through 5 today. Ready? On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and the disciples had also been invited to the wedding. That was our sermon last week. Here's today. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." So again, a vibrant wedding celebration. Families and friends gathered around to honor the union of the two lives. In the midst of the festivity, we have our troublemaking, seemingly, guest in Jesus, his mother and the disciples as well. Another ordinary day at this wedding until it wasn't. The wine runs out, and it threatens to bring some shame upon our hosts that would damper the joyous occasion, that they would run out of wine at this week-long wedding. And it's this everyday crisis that the extraordinary begins to unfold. So Jesus' mother, Mary, noticing this predicament, turns to her son and says a very simple statement, and this is the focus of the sermon today. It's just this bit. I did 25 minutes last week on 5 words, so that today, be prepared. It says, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come." Her words are laden with compassion, this heart attuned to the needs of others. In our own lives, how often do we notice the struggle of those around us? Are we, like Mary, moved to compassion and action when we see the need? That would be one way to take this sermon, and I've heard it preached that way. But I don't think that's what John is pointing at all in this little section between Jesus and his mother. It's a very surprising response. I don't know if you've noticed it before in your reading, but it comes across very surprising. I think the way that Jesus surprises me in this, first of all, is when he calls his mother woman. John records it pretty particularly. There's nothing cultural that says a man couldn't call his mother by his title mother. That would have been perfectly acceptable. Mother, what does this have to do with me? That feels gentler. But Jesus says woman. His response, it's abrupt. It feels a little disrespectful. It'd be like calling her ma'am in some contexts today. I'm not from the South, but I don't think I would ever look at my mother and go, "Ma'am." I feel like you say that when you're like checking somebody out as like a grocery clerk and they're being rude and you go, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to..." You feel the difference to me. But it's a little bit more like that. It's abrupt. He calls her woman, this ma'am thing. But he also says this. He says, "What does this have to do with me?" And that phrase is only used 5 other times in the entirety of the gospel writings. And every single other time, it's not spoken by Jesus or another person. It's spoken by the evil spirits to Jesus. When Jesus intrudes on their domain and starts to exert power when they feel they're in control, they say, "What do you want with us? What does this have to do with us?" It's the same phrase in Greek. And the gist of it is this: I don't need you pressing in on what's mine. This isn't your affair. So every other time, the other 5, it's demons speaking to Jesus about him intruding on their space. So this is the connotation we're getting with this. So he's doubly abrupt with his mother here. He calls her woman, and then he says, "This isn't your place." It does seem that Mary expected him to do something. We don't know exactly what she expected, but we're told that basically Jesus didn't approve of what she was asking. He gently reminds her, that while running out of wine at a wedding is indeed unfortunate, and it may bring shame, it pales in comparison to some greater mission that Jesus has in mind that he's fulfilling. It's not just a disengagement from the situation, but this invitation to see beyond an immediate concern that pales to what he sees his mission being. What I think makes this scene so significant next is that Jesus goes right ahead and takes care of the problem. He could have easily said this then, very gently, "Yes, mother, I know, they're out of wine, I'll take care of it," right? That's what he does. But that's not what he says. And that makes me ask the questions, why have this interaction then? The gospel writers, I teach Old Testament, New Testament, and theology at Indiana Wesleyan, and I tell people when they take my class, I go, the people who wrote the Bible, they weren't stupid. They're pretty good. They do things, they draw your attention. These are arranged and set in a way that we anticipate and appreciate and understand different things from them. It's well written. If he's going to do what his mother had in anyway, why have this little abrupt interaction in the minute? Why have this off-putting section? And I think the answer is that there's this felt burden to make it clear to not only his mother in the narrative, but importantly to those of us reading the text, that because of who he is, the physical relationships on earth don't control or oblige Jesus' mission. Okay, so track with me on this. His mother and his physical family don't have some special advantage to guide the mission of Jesus. The mother and his physical family don't have a special advantage to receive something in this situation. Now, this is played out in other sections, so you know I'm not just making this up. This is played out in other sections as well. The reason that Jesus is absolutely bound to his Father's will in heaven, in John 8:28, I do nothing by my own authority, but I speak just as the Father has taught me. John 5:17 through 19, my Father is working until now, and I am working. I can do nothing of my own accord, but only what the Father sees me doing. For whatever the Father does, the Son does likewise. His miracles are not at his mother's disposal. He's yoked to the will of the Father. Now, John highlights this for us, but if you think in the other Gospels as well, Luke gives us this little narrative somewhat when he heads back to his, is it Luke? Luke, yeah. He goes back to his hometown and he preaches and reads at the temple, and they try to throw him off a cliff because do for us what you did for those in these other areas. Well, they don't have special access to his miracles. This is what he's setting up here just a little bit. He has to work against this assumption during the day. For the people this was written and intended for, this cultural norms, that a physical family, the Bet Av, the family's household, right, has an inside track of influence to the patriarch, to the head, to the person who can do things. Recall the time in the Gospels that a woman in the crowd raises her voice and says to Jesus, "Blessed is the womb that bore you, and the breast that nursed you." And Jesus responds with, "Blessed rather are those that hear from the word of God and keep it." In other words, people thought there would be special spiritual advantage to being connected to Jesus in some way. But this is cut off right at the beginning of John in this narrative. This idea is cut off at that assumption and focus attention not on physical relations, but on spiritual relationships. This is John gives us this. You good with that so far? Good. Great. Another time people called him and he was speaking in a house and they say, "Your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." And Jesus says, "Who are my mothers and my brothers?" And looking at those around him, he said, "Here, those who do the will of my Father." Creating a new family. You catch it. All right. In other words, followers, not family, will have this relationship with Jesus. And that's what we see here with John 2:4. They have no more wine. Woman, what does this have to do with me? Your relationship with me has no bearing here. My relationship to any connection in this has no bearing. You are like anyone else. My Father in heaven, not a human being, determines what miracles I'll perform. And the pathway to my favor is faith, not family. This is good news for us. This is very good news for us. Because of a few things. One, how many of you in here happen to be children of the family of Abraham? Oh, okay. Yeah, great. We have no direct lineal familial relationship to Jesus, the man in Nazareth. You with me? And it doesn't matter what line we would come from at all. Because your parents might be the most ungodly people you know. They will not keep you out of favor with Jesus. Faith, not family, puts you inside of this. The glory of the obedient son. Part of Jesus' glory is this freedom from the family patrilineality and this radical allegiance to the Father in heaven. This creation of a new household that you're a part of. But this movement with the kingdom, if we're going to build off of last week, a little bit, begins with this invitation first. Right? You're not just like me at the wedding of my college friend I had a table outside of the reception that I sat in because they forgot they invited us to the wedding. Right? It's this invitation that puts you inside this relationship where the truth and grace permeate and radiate inside of you, that you have this access, this ability to have this connection, this familiar relationship to Jesus. Who are my brothers and brothers and sisters? Those who follow the will of my Father, those who have invited me in, those who I have brought into the household. And it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to make room for a troublemaker who wants to have rule and order your life and your steps and the things you do. That's not easy. But that's just part one. This is part two. This is this real connection that happens to people when they're in this relationship, and it's a communication. It's a reorienting of your expectations and your heart itself. John makes it clear, right? It's not family that gets you the ear of God. It's not that. It's not a blood relation or a lineage. It's this invitation at step one that gets you this heart change, this next step. And this is Mary's request. Her desire, right, is granted even when she asks for something seemingly completely out of time and out of line. Her faith is motivated by love, and she involved herself in something that wasn't her problem. But her faith is centered in on Jesus on this. She could have asked for help from other people. She could have looked at a servant and been like, you got to go to Kroger, they're out of wine, right? You with me? But she's got a random guest that's, her son, and she believes her first direction is asking him for assistance. Mary was already believing in spite of the fact that her son had not yet performed any miracle. Her belief in him surpassed her fixed belief system. She already believed her son could do something. How many times have we never made a step beyond what we believe because we couldn't imagine something more than that? It's more than just an invitation. It's a communication. It's petitioning. It's action. Look at how this story depicts the idea of prayer, this petition to Jesus in the kingdom. It's asking for stuff. She says, hey, they're out of wine. And even after he says he can't do anything, she turns to the servant with this actionable belief in her mind, and she goes, do whatever he tells you to do. He wants to define this basic way of how you talk in this relationship of intimacy that you've invited in. You ask for things, and it's really optimistic in this story and other times that we see it. You ask Jesus for wine at the wedding, and he chastised you or whatever, and then what happens at the end of the story? There's wine. Wasn't that great? She asked for it, and it happened, and it was perfect. You ask it, and then it happens, Jesus follows through with it. And it's this ramped up intensity. I jumped ahead a little bit here, but she has this basic request. She says they need more wine, and then she waits to receive. But no, she doesn't. She seeks out the solution. She turns to the servants, and she says, do whatever he tells you. He's gonna make this happen. She doesn't just idly wait by. There's another move in this story. She turns and asks them to carry out whatever's next. This is this persistence thing. It's this active faith in it. After telling him the problem, she moves on this request. After she believed, she acted. The question is, how much faith do we have to follow through with an action after maybe even we believe? It'd be like me saying, God, it'd be really great if I could get a new job. But then I don't get on Indeed and start applying and fixing my resume. I could really go, God, my doctor says I could really stand to lose a couple around the old belly. And then I just sit at home and I'm like, well, God, I've asked you to help me here, so I'm not even going to bother learning a new exercise. Do you see the difference? You ask, and then you can wait idly by, but there's this persistence in this moment. She asks and then turns to the servants to tell them to do whatever he wants to do. Just the same for us. May we have an action after we believe he could do something. The way that John depicts Jesus as somebody is not holding out. He gets pestered, it's seemingly, into doing it. It's simple. It's not really complex. But what makes this scene complex, and what makes what I've said complex, and probably what some of you are thinking about as well, is the response that you're already having in your brain. You think about it, and these are really simple, and it's really optimistic. Because I've said things like, I could really do this, or I really need a new job, or I really need to lose weight, or I need this person to be healthy, or I need this or that, and maybe I even do. I start running, I exercise, I apply for jobs, I apply for whatever it is, I put the action in for it, and at the end of the day, months maybe go by, and I see no resolution to the thing that I have been desperately asking for, and I believe Jesus can do. You with me? I think we've all been there. Why do I need to ask if he's just going to do whatever he wants to do anyway? Hey, this would be a good question for questions you're afraid to ask. Dad's after church today. Great. Jesus says things like, wherever 2 or 3 of my disciples are gathered together in my name, I'm right in the midst of them. And whatever they ask for in my name, they'll receive it. He's going to say things like, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. And you can ask anything and trust that you'll receive it. And so these are the teachings that Jesus gives us about prayer, which are clearly so important to him. And it's this repeated theme, and it's this theme that most of us struggle with. And I know that I've struggled with it personally. And I know it's true for so many of us in here, because those things don't seem to work. And John sets it up for us right here. This invitation, inviting Jesus in. And it doesn't matter if you're family or not. And we need to petition Jesus, and he's going to follow through with it. But it just doesn't seem to work. I'm in the position. I'm petitioning. I have the actions that follow through. And I'm seeing no resolution from it, John. The whole story of the Bible is about how God the King has sovereignly chosen to work out his purposes in the world through humans. That's Genesis 1. That is God's sovereign choice to do that, to empower humans to do the will and the work of the kingdom. It's a relationship story. I teach Old Testament, like I've said, and I tell people the narrative of the entire Old Testament is God's relationship to humanity. This is the story of the Old Testament. Where is the relationship? What is it in? Is it broken? How is it being repaired? This is the meta-narrative of the entire Old Testament. It's a relationship story. And if I have real relationship, I have certain things I want to do to be shaped. Think about a relationship you might have if you have children or kids in your life, or you're a teacher, whatever it is. I'm going to use the teacher example. You guys are teachers. You really want those kids to be the best you could ever imagine. You can do all you can. You can put the right quizzes in front of them. You can help them study. You can do one-on-one whatever. You can get them in tutoring. You can love them. You can give them extra time. You can care for them. You can make sure that you can do all these things. You want to shape them. But you want them to be real people, right? And ultimately that means you can't force them, can you? Because they're a person. They have dignity to choose. At the same time, no matter how much you want to shape them, your children, your teacher, whatever it is, you have to give them the real space and the real dignity as a person to bear out the image they were given. Because the moment you force your agenda on their decisions, the moment you force the decision, it ceases to be a relationship anymore. You have to learn to balance this as a parent, as a father, right? I've had to learn to balance this of when do I guide versus when do I allow them to make choices and make mistakes and own those and own their successes. Halloween is fun. The first year we did Halloween with Charlie, we did this thing. It was a bad decision. She had a bucket full of candy. And then my mom came and she had 2 buckets of candy. And then her mom came and she had 5 buckets of candy. And then, you see where I'm at? And we were like, you get 2 pieces of candy every day until they're gone. And that little girl milked it. That candy lasted forever. And we got to a point where there's just so much, and I was like, we're done, no more candy. But we had set this bad boundary up. So the next year, Ashley goes, this will do. We're going to do the old, I'm going to watch you smoke a pack of cigarettes till you throw up thing. We said, you can eat all the candy you want. We are never going to say no. If you want it, walk in the pantry, open it up. Boy, at Halloween last year, she ate 50,000 calories worth of candy in a single evening. Did she get sick? Absolutely. But that was her choice. She had the dignity to learn something. I could have forced my agenda on her, but she didn't learn anything. She didn't grow. She didn't come to a realization. I tried to force her to be something that she hadn't figured out yet herself. I wasn't making her a person. I was making her a little thing I thought I could control. You got to learn to guide, and you got to learn when to let them have mistakes that they can own and successes then that they can own. Because guess what? With candy now, she's got half a bucket of candy in there. She didn't even eat. I don't even know if she knows it still exists. She learned something. Tummy aches are not fun. When she gets older, she'll learn what candy really does to you. You know, we'll get there eventually. It's an analogy, right? But this is what the story of the Bible is trying to tell us. That this is a relationship, God to people. Which means that two things. One, God's not up in heaven biting his fingernails thinking, man, how's this going to work out? Because I knew how opening up the candy bucket to Charlie was going to work out. I knew. I wasn't sitting over there like, what if she somehow doesn't become sick from eating this much candy? Like, what if, I'm not too worried about how this is going to turn out. God knows he's going to redeem things at the end of time. He knows he's going to do it. He knows the outcome is as certain as Jesus rising from the dead. He knows this is going to happen. He created a real arena, a real creative space where the human being and the divine interact in relationship, where that relationship and decision making can have real success and it can have real failure. To choose to follow and obey or choose to rebel and reject. He's not biting his fingernails over it. What this means is that Jesus is inviting us to see obedience to him as part of this partnership. But prayer and petition is a crucial part of what that actually means. All this stuff that we get in this, God and Jesus basically saying, if you petition, you receive. It's simple math. If you don't ask, you don't get it. If you don't petition, nothing happens. Mary could have sat there and watched the wine disappear and nothing would have happened. It's so simple. The clear implication of what he's saying is that there are so many good things that God would want to have happen in and through us, or happen in this world, but that won't happen if we don't have a relationship and an ability to petition it. They will not happen, because we have the dignity to exist in our own devices. Does this make sense? We don't ask, we don't petition, there is no wine. Nothing will happen. How is that not the conclusion you can't draw from this? I love that. God will always do beyond whatever we ask and imagine. But Jesus, this invitation John gives us, is inviting us to say that our petitions in the kingdom, this relationship, the things we ask for actually matter. They really do matter. Obedience matters, your prayers matter, your failures, your choices, it all matters. If he's really partnering with us in some way, then what we want to see is that those things actually matter. And that's silly. But again, sometimes I don't think I believe it. Because if I believed it, I think I would pray more than I do. You ready for a fun, embarrassing, not really embarrassing, sad. I'll say sad story. This is like, I reflected on it for so long after it happened, I couldn't believe it. There's this funny thing with pastors. What we do is pretty widespread. And I always tell people, you can tell what pays the bills, and you can tell what pastors enjoy doing based on the books on their bookshelf, right? So you can tell based on the thing. We have 2 bookshelves in our TV room that's full of all my books. They're like 90% of them are about biblical interpretation, preaching, or homiletics, like most of them. I got a couple books about, this or that, and I got like one book called Therapeutic Pastoral Counseling. It's about this long, and I've definitely read it. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely read it. I hate it. It's my least favorite. The other thing I really hate is public prayer. I really hate praying in public. I really do. I just despise it. At family gatherings, they're like, all right, it's time to pray. And they're like, where's Phil? You know, and I'm like hiding behind a table hoping no one notices. I was up after Adam's surgery. Yeah, you're laughing. You're laughing because here it comes. And Ashley's going to get thrown under the bus on this one. Ashley knows I really don't like public prayer. I really it's just not, it's not my thing. And we were up after his surgery. It was great. And Ashley goes, I think someone needs to pray. You know? And I was like, yeah, I mean, you're perfectly capable, you know? And she's like, but you have a badge and stuff. And so I just I'm hesitant to do so. You know what I mean? Like, if I really believed it was as effective as it would, I would be better at praying in public. I reflect on that. Do you see what I mean? I'm no better than any of you. And that raises the question then, what should we ask for in this petition? What do we learn from Mary's experience? And as we look at this water into wine thing in the coming weeks, you're going to see how this prayer request, this request of Mary, is really one of this cry of the kingdom, and she's in the same boat that we are when we just maybe don't see God responding in the way that we want. It's this metaphor for Jesus' grace and victory. And so our prayer should be this kingdom cry. I'm going to go back to this because this is setting up next week. So you guys are getting a little foray into next week slightly. I can believe all these things. I can say I'm going to pray more. I can do all this stuff, and I can be more whatever. But what matters here is that in this story, Phil, I don't know if you've noticed, but Mary's prayer, like you said, it was answered right away. She saw the wine and they drank and it was happy and stuff. What about us? What do our experiences with prayer? When it hits the ceiling and nothing happens. This is next week with this story. I'm going to continue this idea because we don't get a nice bow wrapped on this. I think through Scripture, we do get it addressed somewhat. Our experiences with that unanswered. Like, I've done the things, I followed through, I've done it, nothing seems to be happening. I've cried to the kingdom for help, all these different things. And the only thing I can think of is this story in John, which we're going to talk about next week, of what happens with Mary's request and how that speaks to the same thing. But the other place that I'm going to leave you with this image so that you can understand the human experience. I use this story a lot when I talk about the incarnation of Jesus. I was like, hey, Jesus was a real human being. He had real human experience. And this story to me is the human experience of Jesus with prayer wrapped up in one nice spot. And it's what I go to when I think about unanswered prayers hitting the ceiling. I love this so much. You guys ready for this? This is such a good story. Is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's about to be arrested. He's sitting in the garden praying with his disciples, begging them that they would stay awake and pray with him. And he's in this night of long, agonizing prayer. And he asks something very particular in the garden. He says, Father, anything's possible for you, right? But I don't want to go through with this. Any chance there could be a different ending to this story? So here's the question that I have for his I think the most human prayer he has. Was his request answered? No. He died the next morning. But at the same time, he's wrestling with and making this request. He concludes with a statement that is this God relationship fully wrapped up. And he says this, at the end of this whole prayer thing, this relationship perfectly wrapped up of exactly what we're getting at. He says, however, at the end of the day, it's not what I want, it's what you want. Whatever in your wisdom and your grace, whatever it is, let that be done. Boy, there's the other side of that coin, isn't it? He puts himself in a place of absolute, genuine trust. He He is God with us in the experiences that we have of kneeling, of years of praying for something that you just never see the answer to. The Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is the God become human that agonizes this human experience. You don't know. This is a prequel to next week. You don't know what 5 years worth of praying for someone will do. You don't know if it's going to be answered in the form that you want it to. And there could be loads of reasons for it. You don't know the way that a prayer request might find fruition in some new kingdom outside of your purview. You just don't know. And it seems that we are placed as disciples of Jesus in a place of trust and hope. But can we, after inviting Jesus in, even with no real promise to see anything come to fruition, work in prayer and petition for the coming of the kingdom of God as He sees fit? That's what we get from Mary in this petition. Let's pray.